Hey guys, it's Zach Galenzi with Bisbee Construction. Want to talk to you today a little bit about shower stalls for custom tile work. More specifically, I'm going to go over installing a pan liner. There's a lot of information on the internet. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good. So I'm just going to go through the techniques that I use, that I've been using for several years, and have served me pretty well. For those of you who don't know me, I have a pretty long history being in construction. My dad was a general contractor, and so he started taking me to jobs as a way of bonding when I was a kid, which I hated it. I didn't want to go to work and do manual labor, but now I'm really enjoying, working with my hands and producing stuff and being able to help customers out where I can, with the knowledge that I've learned over the course of over 2 decades now. So stick with me, and I'm going to go through what I do when I install my pan liners, and hopefully you guys can maybe adopt some practices and make your job a little bit easier and less of a headache. So for those of you who have ever installed a shower pan liner, you know that the corners are the biggest pain in the butt, okay? And so what I've done is figured out a way to make sure that when you're installing your HardieBacker over your pan liner, that your HardieBacker actually is going to be nice and flush in the corner, or I should say plumb down here, okay? The problem of it is when you put your pan liner behind here in the corners, when you fold it over, you end up having a buildup of excess. So this 40 millimeter, or I should say 40 mil PVC liner is pretty thick, and when you fold it over a couple of times, you end up having, so what happens is you end up having this thick buildup of pan liner material back here. And so what I do to get rid of that problem is I take shims, drywall shims. You can buy these at any major department store, Home Depot, Lowe's. All they are is cardboard pieces that are 1.5 inches wide. They're made to go on 2x4s, the same thickness. So then, after you put your pan liner 6 to 8 inches up your wall, like this, you're gonna take a stapler and just staple in a couple of spots. You don't need to go overboard and staple a lot, just a couple of staples per foot, or even one staple per foot would probably be okay. And then you can float your HardieBacker directly over that, creating a nice, consistent, flat wall. So rather than having your HardieBacker kick out on this other wall, on the adjacent wall here, you'll actually just float right over the top of it. You'll have a nice straight line, nice consistent line on this wall here. Now, another thing that I'm seeing is when people are building their shower stalls, they're putting this liner on the face of their vapor barrier, okay? And the problem with that is as you're probably well aware, water, through the hydraulic nature of it and capillarity, will actually wick its way back up behind the HardieBacker and the shower membrane. And so what you have to do is, on top of your studs, you really need to drape your plastic over the top of your pan liner and let it hang down. And it's okay if it hangs down to the bottom. A lot of guys are gonna say, well, no, that's a problem because it's gonna wick moisture back behind it. And that's true, it would wick moisture back behind it. But what you're gonna do is you're gonna take a bead of silicone, a really, hardy bead of silicone, and you're gonna go behind your flap, and then you're gonna go over the top of your flap and across the face of it, and then you're gonna drape your moisture barrier over the top of it. So what you get this cascade of water that goes down. So you get a cladding system. And with that moisture barrier being, being stuck with the silicone behind it, you're not gonna get that capillarity or that hydraulic effect of water behind it, because that silicone is going to stop all of that water from crawling up the back of it, okay? So that's really important. The other thing of it is after you've got your backer on, like this, or however I had it, after you have your backer on, you're not gonna put screws down here. You're not gonna put screws in. I usually hold it about 8 inches off the bottom pan liner, okay? And the reason being is because if water does work its way back up there, you don't want holes further down, because then that's a lot easier for water to just work its way up the back and get into the screw holes, okay? And the nice thing about 1/2-inch HardieBacker, whenever you're building a shower stall, you don't have to worry about it moving a whole lot, okay? Because 1/2-inch HardieBacker is so rigid that if you have an 8-inch span, the structure of it itself is going to hold it stable, okay? Before you put your pan liner in, you should do a pre-slope, okay? And it's roughly 1.5 inches down to the flat drain, okay? So let's say, for example, the drain is gonna be here. You're gonna have your mud that's gonna be 1.5 inches on the edge, and it's gonna be sloped down to your drain. Then you're gonna put your pan liner over the top of it, and make sure you silicone underneath the liner around the drain. And there's lots of videos out there on how you can do that. That's not that difficult. After this is all installed, what I'm gonna do is, now remember, there's the moisture barrier that drapes over the top of it, and so it's sealed with a silicone line, the bead, all the way around your shower pan. And now I'm gonna go and mark my 1.5 inches about here, all the way around, and make sure it's nice and level. And then I'm gonna level my drain accordingly, okay? And so what that does is, because this pan liner is now 1.5 inches off of the ground, remember, for the pre-slope, and the drain was flat, by doing 1.5 inches thickness all the way down to your drain on the second layer, you should already be at a slope, because you're just building one layer on top of another layer that's parallel, all right? And so what that does is, when you pack your mud down in this pan, you're actually putting pressure against that spot on the HardieBacker. Remember, if your screw is like right here, your next point of support is that mud bed that you're packing down tight, okay? So that's gonna hold your mud bed, and that's gonna hold your HardieBacker to your studs without having any penetrations through your pan liner, okay? Some people are gonna have problems with this technique, because they're gonna say, okay, well, your HardieBacker is inside your pan, and so it's going to wick moisture up the HardieBacker, which is going to be true if you don't do any kind of liquid membrane, like a RedGuard or an Aqua Defense or whatever other product you prefer to use, the liquid elastomeric. I prefer to use RedGuard. That's because I've been using that for the last 15 years. But you can just choose whatever you want. Now, the reason why I'm saying that it's okay to do it this way is because after your mud bed is installed, let's say for sake of example, this piece of HardieBacker represents your mud bed, okay? And then you have HardieBacker here. I'm gonna take mesh tape and I'm gonna tape and mud the seam between the HardieBacker and the mud bed, okay? Now what that does is it makes a connection between the HardieBacker and the mud bed so that you don't pop this seam right here, okay? Because that's really important. Water likes to work its way in cracks. So anytime you have a seam that cracks because you didn't join it with like some sort of mesh tape and mud, you have a penetration area that can work its way down in there, okay? And then if that happens, then yeah, it will end up getting its water back down underneath the HardieBacker. The HardieBacker will wick the water up the wall, and it could cause problems, but I'm not too concerned about that because I have a moisture barrier that has been siliconed all the way behind it. So even if it does work its way down there and it saturates the HardieBacker, HardieBacker is made to be wet and it's made to keep its structural integrity even though it's wet, okay? After the mud bed gets installed and you've mud and taped your seams all the way along, then what you're gonna do is you're gonna coat the entire shower stall with RedGuard or whatever kind of liquid elastomeric you choose, okay? And what that does is that liquid membrane gives you your first layer of defense, okay? And if that's consistently stable and there's no pinholes or it's not delaminating or it's not, you know, cracking, then that'll provide an adequate barrier. So that's your second line of defense, okay? The third line of defense is having that moisture barrier draping over the top of your membrane. So that way, if anything does work its way through there, you've got a moisture barrier on top of your studs all the way down into your pan liner. So it's like a plastic shower stall underneath your cement shower stall, which is underneath your liquid waterproofing, okay? So you've got 3 lines of defense by doing it this way. Now, for the people who are curious about how many layers it takes of whatever this is called, drywall shims, I like to use 3 to 4. If you look at it, 3 would probably go straight down over it and allow your walls to be plumb. It's probably kind of hard to see in this video, but you get the idea. I wouldn't do more than 4, okay? And then as far as sticking your membrane to the studs, I would keep your fastener as high up as you possibly can, and you could get away with using staples because remember, everything else is going to be held with pressure up against it. It's not going anywhere, okay? Once you put the screws through the HardieBacker. Or you can use like a flathead screw, but keep in mind, any kind of screw that you use is going to push out further, so you're going to want to compensate with more shims. So that's why I say use 3 to 4 drywall shims, depending on what kind of fastener you have, because you don't want to put this down and then put in a huge like round head. I don't have one in front of me, but a head that protrudes a lot, because you're gonna have the same problem where your HardieBacker just kind of kicks out, you know. So be aware of that. So if you like this video, then share it with your friends. Give me a thumbs up. And if you want to see more, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I'm going to try and put out more content in the future that helps the average person navigate their way through projects at home. And hopefully maybe some other professionals out there can either learn or they can critique and show me their ideas and challenge mine. I'm always up for that. So if you think you have a better way of doing it, then let me know. If you like to see more of what I'm doing, then leave a comment and tell me what you want to see. Otherwise, just keep watching. Thanks for being here, and I appreciate you guys. Take care.